Hello, welcome to Workplace Wake Up. I'm Jen Shaw. Every week, I spend about 15 minutes covering key legal developments, introducing you to interesting guests, and providing some entertainment to start your workday. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Oh my gosh, it's such a beautiful day in Sacramento. We have had one heck of a heat wave, and I know most of the West Coast has been suffering. My sister, of course, is in Aptos, which is near Santa Cruz, and their high was 59 degrees yesterday. So she is a happy camper. I, on the other hand, am sweltering in Sacramento, but it is beautiful. We have a nice blue sky, and I hope wherever you are, it is a nice day and you're having a good summer. So we're going to talk today about leaves of absence. Now, I know we talk about different aspects of leaves all the time, but I really started thinking about how to give you all a framework to help you strategize when you're dealing with leaves of absence. One of the things that we note in our firm, Elena Schroeder, Julia Melnico, and I are sort of the advice lawyers in the firm. And a lot of the questions we get from our clients are about leaves of absence. And we always want to be able to tell clients, okay, here's the 3 steps you should follow. This is really simple. This is how you can do it. And unfortunately, if you have handled leaves of absence before, you know that it doesn't really work that way, right? We're not really in a situation where we can tell you these are the 3 easy steps and then you're fine. There's a lot of individualized assessment. There's a lot of really recognizing that the facts really matter when you're dealing with leaves of absence. So what I'm going to give you today is a little bit of a framework to help you understand how you can approach these leave issues in a way that I think will be easily understood and also easy to put into place if you don't already have a practice that you like. So first thing we always look at is what the law requires and what your policy requires. So for many of you, you want to be cutting edge employers, you want to be employers of choice. So you may be giving your employees more than the law requires when it comes to leave. You might give more sick leave. You might give what we call unlimited vacation. You might give extra time for someone who's had a child or to bond with a new baby, or because they have a relative, for example, who may need some help. So there's the minimum requirements that the law imposes, and then there's your policy. So the first thing I want you to look at is, does your policy, and of course you're going to have a lot of different policies in the leave of absence area, do your policies satisfy the legal requirements? And where you do more than the law requires, are you doing it consistently? Because we want to be careful that if we're making distinctions, for example, we can give benefits to exempt employees that we don't give to non-exempt employees, or vice versa. We can give benefits to full-time employees that we don't give to part-time employees. What you can't do is make a distinction between 2 employees who are similarly situated. So in the same department, do the same job generally, that sort of thing. You have to have a legitimate reason for making those distinctions. So it's important to understand when you're looking at your framework for leaves of absence in your organization that you look at both the law, what's the minimum that the law requires, and your policy. The next thing I want you to look at is if you are a multi-state employer, I want you to think about what are you going to do in other states. For example, let's say you have an operation in California and an operation in Minnesota. California has state disability insurance, which applies when people are unable to work. We also have paid family leave when somebody wants to bond with a new child or take care of a family member. Those are legally required. There are deductions made from employees' paychecks, and then those are wage replacement benefit programs. They don't have those programs in Minnesota. So what do you want to do? Do you want to do something similar for your employees in Minnesota? Do you want to have a different policy, one that applies to California employees, one that applies to folks in Minnesota? You get to choose how you want to do that, but you need to make a purposeful decision. So you want to have a strategy in terms of how you are dealing with that issue. you don't want it to be fly by the seat of your pants. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do until the situation comes up type of thing. All right. You need to have a strategy. You need to have a plan for what you're doing. Now, you also need to have someone responsible for leaves of absence in your organization. Now, I call it a team, but it can be a team of one, right? And it may be somebody who has 7 other hats, because you may be a smaller organization where you don't actually have a person dedicated just to leaves of absence. You also may be in a big organization where you have 5 people dedicated. One person does the paperwork. One person follows up with the healthcare providers and the employees. One person tracks everything to make sure that the employees are getting everything they're entitled to. One person deals with the benefits aspect. I mean, there are so many different ways to do this. One person deals with workers' comp, right? And as we all know, there's no such thing as a workers' compensation leave of absence. You have to treat folks who have industrial injuries and illnesses the same as you treat others. But you got to have a process in place. You need to recognize how the doctor's notes may be different for folks who have a pending workers' compensation claim. So you need to have somebody or a team in the organization that is responsible for managing these leaves. It should not fall on the individual managers and supervisors, because when you do that, first of all, they're too close to the situation. So they may not be able to really apply all the factors and all of the analysis that you need to apply to make the right decision. They're just too close because they need the work done, right? And they also may have a very fond feeling for a particular employee. So they feel like they want to give them more than maybe they would give to someone else. So it needs to be somebody outside of that employee's regular chain of command. You also need to keep track of concurrent leaves. Remember, for example, somebody may be on FMLA for a pregnancy, so that means they're using pregnancy disability leave in California and FMLA. Somebody may be on FMLA for their own serious health condition that is not pregnancy, so they're going to be on FMLA and California Family Rights Act time, right? That concurrent leave situation can be tricky for folks, so you have to make sure that you have a way to map it out. I'm always asked if I know a good vendor for this purpose, and I sure wish I did. I don't. I have not found a good vendor that actually takes account of all of the idiosyncrasies of California law. I wish I did. If any of you have someone you love who you feels like they do it right, terrific. Let me know. Shoot me an email. I would love to know. But otherwise, you're going to have to do it yourself. Whatever you want to do, you can use a spreadsheet, you can use a Word document, you can do whatever you want to do, but you've got to be able to track these leaves. The other thing I want you to remember is to beware of a third-party administrator. We talked about this last week when we looked at itemized wage statements. You have to pick a good payroll vendor, someone you can trust to do what needs to be done correctly. Same way with leaves of absence. I haven't found a great leave vendor that can do everything, right? You're going to have to do some things on site. You're going to have those conversations with employees and make sure they understand what information you need and how the process works. So it's not that you can't use a third-party administrator, but I want you to be very careful about doing that and make sure that you really have someone who understands all of the different leaves. Remember, for this year, we have reproductive loss leave, and many people don't even know what that means, right? And what it covers. So make sure if you're using a third-party administrator that they know what the rules are. Another thing I want you to think about is documentation. Documentation is really everything, you guys. You've got to be able to show what you did, when you did it, and why you did it, right? Not as an afterthought when the lawyer tells you you need to document this. You should be documenting along the way, all right? And you need to have a documentation system. I don't care if it is you email yourself to remind yourself what's going on, or you have a form you fill out, or you have a checklist. Whatever it is you're doing is fine. Just make sure you do it consistently and make sure that you are including key information. For example, if you're putting information into a database that is available to a lot of different people, there should be a category or a field for a name so that we know who prepared this documentation. And if different people are entering different things, it's going to be really important to know, all right, well, who entered this information? Maybe there's something that seems a little wonky or seems a little off, and we'll be able to tell what's going on by talking to the person who entered that information. The other thing you've got to do, of course, which is really hard, is stay up to date on the rules. You should pick some law firms you want to follow in terms of their podcasts, their webinars, their blog posts. We have a blog. We do this podcast. We do webinars. We're not the only game in town. I feel like we do it really well, but there are lots of different firms that do what we do, and it's worth having a couple of different perspectives. So you've got to be able to stay up to date. You need to know when laws have changed. You need to know when best practices are changing. And the only way to do that is really make time to read blogs, to listen to podcasts. There's no shortcut. Like, I often wish I could just put everything under my pillow and go to sleep and wake up and have it all be in my brain, right? It just unfortunately doesn't work that way. So when we're talking about staying up to date, it's not only staying up to date with the laws and the rules and the best practices, but also with what's going on in your organization. Do you have patterns? Do you have trends that you're seeing? Do you have particular departments that tend to be calling out frequently? Can you figure out why? What's going on? If you look at leaves holistically and you really start thinking about this as, okay, my leave of absence sort of track record, right, is saying a lot about my organization. Do I have particular groups who call out frequently? Do I have particular groups that never call out? Why? Let's figure out on both ends of the spectrum. You want to be able to understand those trends to see, number one, are you doing what you need to be doing to help folks? Number two, do you want to change your practices or your policies? Are there things you're seeing? For example, of course, biggest example was COVID. COVID is having a nice resurgence this summer. I've had it. I've only had it twice. And I got it a year ago, April, and I just got it again at the end of last month. And it was a humdinger. It was not a good version for me at all. I'm really glad to be through with it and done with it, but a lot of people are calling in sick. And a lot of people are getting pneumonia because of this version or this strain of COVID. So you want to know what's going on with your demographics internally, so you can also be thinking about, are there changes you need to make to your policies and practices? Are there things that you really need to take into consideration that maybe weren't on your radar at the time you put the policy into place? The final thing I want you to do, going back to the policy, is just making sure that you update your policy when you have a legal change. Remember, a lot of laws are now being signed. We're starting that process in the legislative year. You need to be paying attention to what laws are passing, what laws are enacted. I mean, it's very interesting intellectual exercise to look at which ones weren't, which ones didn't make it out of committee, which ones didn't get signed off on. But what you really care about are the ones that did, all right? And if you can stay up to date with those and then adjust your policies and procedures accordingly, that's going to make a big difference in terms of keeping you compliant. You may do that in an off cycle from your employee handbook. It's totally fine. Those of you who have sort of a living handbook online where you just replace pages or policy numbers, it's easy to do that in the middle of the year. Even if you don't do that, you can have a post on the handbook on your intranet that tracks the changes that you've made. And then at the end of the year, you accept all the changes and issue a new version. There are a lot of different ways to actually handle those kinds of changes to policies, but it's really important that your leave policies are dynamic, that they're not static. They don't just sit there once they're written, you cross them off the list and say, phew, so glad I'm done with that part of the job. Nope, not the way we want you to think about this. You're going to need to take the time to really make sure that you are dotting your I's and crossing your T's and you're updating those policies as needed. If you take these steps, if you think about the leave of absence process as a holistic process, it's really going to help. It touches on a lot of different areas, and you're going to be a lot more successful identifying the outliers and making sure that you're being consistent in your leave administration if you follow these steps. Remember, if you are needing some help in administering these leaves of absence, we have an annual workshop. It's coming up on September 19th and September 26th. This is the advanced version. That doesn't mean you have to have any prior experience. It just means we talk about tougher, more tricky issues. So I always recommend people do the beginning and the advanced. And then once you've done the beginning, you can just start doing the advanced one. We change it every single year, new hypos, new things to talk about. I'm working on the materials right now for the September sessions. So they do fill up quickly, and we limit space to make sure that everyone has a chance to talk about their issues and participate. So if you haven't signed up for that yet, go to our website. You can sign up for that on the 19th and the 26th. So I hope these were helpful, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Please go out and do something nice for someone today, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much. Workplace Wake Up, including our guests and hosts, do not provide legal advice in this podcast. Do not act upon any of the information discussed in this podcast without first consulting a licensed attorney in your jurisdiction. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to spread the word, please share it with others, post about it on social media, and/or rate and review it. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, and email us at info@shawlawgroup.com.